Hello there, everybody. Welcome to Coffee Shop Thursday. It's that time when we all sit around our favorite coffee shop, grabbing our cup of coffee, sipping it down. It's just heavenly. And we all show off to each other our immense knowledge of Scripture. Oh, we just show off like you wouldn't believe. Well, we really shouldn't, should we? But we can sure help each other out in trying to understand some of these difficult parts of the Bible, such as the whole episodes, all those scripture passages, Samuel and Kings and Chronicles that talk about some of those kings of Israel, and how sometimes we have such a distorted picture of their reign and their powers and just who they were. And maybe sometimes it's not so distorted. It really does show that we as people can be one jumbled mess. We really can. We who are called to be the followers of Jesus. Back then, those who were called to follow Yahweh in all His ways. Yep, we can be one jumbled mess. And yet, maybe there are times we should just reflect on the good points. And that's what our passage from 1 Kings chapter 8 does. This is the alternate reading that some churches use, that use the Revised Common Lectionary, and it's one that has been following along now in the Older Testament, the stories of the first kings of Israel, and we're up to Solomon, and this is actually taking place toward the end of his reign. He has just established himself one amazing, there's no other word to say than empire. It's not really even a kingdom, it's an empire. It's wealthy. It controls all the trade in the region. He has a massive standing army. It's just incredible. And as we'll see a little bit later, it came at a huge cost, a huge expense when it comes to being faithful to God and Yahweh. So, but what is today's passage that we're looking at? What does it deal with? It deals with the one thing that David wanted to do, but God said, hey, that's going to be for someone else. And it was for Solomon, David's son. Solomon builds the temple. And this is where things really get sort of neat and powerful, and yet even at the same time it's kind of I don't want to say a sad moment, but it's one that which the people make an attempt and actually do begin to box God in. We often talk about can't put God in a box, he's too big for that. Well, that's a little bit like what's going on when Solomon finally put God in the temple. He's no longer in the tent that dwells amongst the people. Now he's in a place. He's kind of in a box. In some ways it's good. In some ways it's detrimental. And we can talk about that an awful lot. What's that? Oh, yeah. Here it's kind of shown in a good light. And we see that. The reading is kind of a confusing one. It starts with verse 1 of chapter 8, then it skips to 6, then it skips to verse 10. I mean, it's just kind of all over the place. What it's trying to do is set the scene for the prayer that Solomon offered. And it is a pretty awesome prayer. It's a heartfelt prayer, and it's one that highlights some points that I think are pretty impressive for us as people. I'd like to just point to a part of the prayer or the talk that Solomon had that's not included in the reading, and it's verse 27. But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Even heaven and highest heaven cannot contain you, much less this house that I have built. So Solomon realized that, this is a happy occasion, yet at the same time, we've got to be careful. We've got to be careful that we put God into a box and say, this is where you belong, this is what you do, and nothing else. And as we'll see, Solomon fell victim to that very thing later on in his rule. So all I can say is, yikes, be careful. But there's also some beautiful parts of this prayer. After the little introductory part where he's calling upon God and praising God for all the things that he did and asking him to continue to fulfill his promise to David and all that kind of stuff. Then there's some of the parts that aren't included talk about the lives of the people and how the temple can be a place where they come to find forgiveness and find renewal. So that's a pretty cool thing. Then it talks about the different things that could go wrong in an empire, in a kingdom, things that indeed will go wrong with the people of Israel, and how God can still be a part of that and lead them through that and out of it. So that likewise is pretty good. But I like what comes at the very end of the first part of the prayer that is part of the lectionary reading. When a foreigner who is not of your people Israel comes from a distant land because of your name, for they shall hear of your great name, your mighty hand, your outstretched arm. When a foreigner comes and prays toward this house, then hear in heaven your dwelling place, and do according to all that the foreigner calls to you, so that all the peoples of the earth may know your name and fear you, as do your people Israel, so that they may know that your name has been invoked in this house that I have built. That is so very important, because we have something that has been a part of Israel's history, and that is invoking Yahweh to not only be a part of their lives, but also recognizing that he is God of all the nations, of all the peoples of the earth, from north, south, east, west. And here, indeed, Solomon is petitioning God. Listen to them. When these foreigners come, people that don't know you, but have heard your name, and they start praying, and now they're praying to you, listen to them. Touch their lives. Become a part of their lives. That's also a prayer that we should have for the people around us, people who are looking for love, for comfort, for support, for justice, whatever may be going wrong in their lives, and they come to us, maybe walk in our church doors seeking solace, seeking something, maybe just plain old meaning in their lives. What are we doing to offer our prayers to God that God might meet the needs of these people? How are we welcoming them into this place of love, of peace, of reconciliation? All these things are basically mentioned in this prayer of Solomon. That's what the temple was supposed to do, supposed to be. And I think for much of its time, it was indeed that. Oh, yeah, I love the Older Testament in that it's very open and honest about how the ways that corruption can sneak in, even into our religious life, how it can infiltrate and affect our political outlook, our sociological outlook, our economic outlook, how we take advantage of other people, we become greedy, we become selfish and self-centered. Oh yeah, it's honest in all that stuff. And it's very honest here that the temple can deteriorate into that type of thing. Oh yeah. So Solomon's prayer is that wouldn't happen. And as I said before, as we read on, we see unfortunately it did. But fortunately, something else did happen. That something else was this guy, he gets born in a barn. Yep, his name was Jesus. And that something would change once again our whole outlook on life, our relationship with God. It would restore a broken relationship, a relationship that had become focused solely on ourselves and not those around us, and not even on God. Any talk of God very often turned into, how can I use God for my own benefit? Well, I would encourage you to read the entire chapter, 1 Kings chapter 8. The whole thing is dedicated to this prayer of Solomon, and it is one powerful prayer. God's blessings be with you, and enjoy your time with your friends drinking your coffee on Coffee Shop Thursday. That is so good. Blessings be with you.